Good evening and welcome to the Dollar Dogs and Beer podcast. I am your host, Andrew, and we are all back together. Joe is off the day-to-day IL, and it's good to have all three of us back for the first time in a couple weeks, I think, now that I think about it. Joe, how you doing after a week off to rest up and recover and recuperate?
Doing good. Thanks for holding down the fort for me. Busy stuff at work and family time over that previous weekend. So long weekend and all that, catching up to you. So appreciate you filling in, taking over.
Hey, no problem, man. Family comes first.
Yes, sir.
Jason, what are you up to tonight?
Currently watching the Phillies lose to the Orioles because, why not? But yeah, I'm glad that we can have all three of us here and ready for another good show.
Here's the thing. With the starting lineup the Phillies ran out today, they don't deserve to win this game.
They're not trying to win the game. Yeah, when you put Harrison, Cave, and Stubbs in instead of Bo Marsh and Real Muto, and Turner also got tossed.
Of course,
and then you have Sanchez on the mound, who is the fifth starter, but it shouldn't even be a fifth starter. You're kind of already mailing in the game. So congratulations to the Orioles on keeping their sweepless streak alive, getting to number 74, I think, maybe 73.
That's pretty damn good. Yeah, it's a terrible starting lineup, but we'll get into that a little later.
Yeah.
So, Joe, what are you drinking tonight?
I am drinking some Evan Williams cherry on the ice ball tonight, and I have a Diet Mountain Dew as a backup, so this could be fun. And I'm wearing the Batman shirt and this kind of mix-up of drinks because I just don't know what team I have right now. I don't know if we're Bruce Wayne or we're Batman.
That's a really fair point, Joe. Yeah, who knows? Buy, sell, stand indifferent. I could see it going anyway for you guys at this point. Jason, what are you drinking tonight?
Tonight I have one of my favorites. I still had a couple left. So we have the Noda Brewing Company or Node Brewing Company, the Cheerwine Ale. So absolutely love this beer. So yeah.
Yeah, I wish it was up here more regularly. It was quite tasty. Tonight, I am hearkening back to vacation days and going with one of my favorites from Cape May Brewing Company, Crushing It. Always a classic. Ronnie's already popping in. Joe, Ronnie says Superman's better. What do you have to say to that?
False.
I got nothing, man.
False.
Ronnie, the fact that you're trying to have a debate over the DC universe and trying to find out which hero is better when the entirety of the MCU just annihilates DC, bro, just give it up, man.
Superman is allergic to sapphires.
Well,
he can't touch a gem, so
more like emeralds, but yeah.
Yeah, whatever. He can't touch rocks.
And villains got, if you remember from the DC comics, villains got very creative in the ways that they were using kryptonite to stop Superman. So, Ronnie just stirring the pot. Well, I mean, we figured. We'll let you stir the pot until we get to fantasy baseball. All right, so let's roll into the Hall of Fame, guys. We had two inductees this weekend, Fred McGriff, the crime dog, and Scott Rowland, both inducted to Cooperstown on Sunday. Looking at McGriff first, a couple quotes from him. He said, "This is baseball's biggest honor. This is like icing on the cake. You see, my goal was simply to make it to the big leagues. I was on a mission to improve as a hitter. It was time to work. That meant becoming a student of the game, reading books, watching videos about hitting. Charlie Lau's The Art of Hitting 300 became my go-to book. It was like my Bible." So McGriff did not get elected by the writers, but he was a unanimous choice by the 16-member Contemporary Baseball Era Committee. Through the writers, he had topped out at 39.8%. He played for 6 different teams and was traded during the season at the deadline twice. He hit 30 or more home runs in a season, for a record 5 different teams. He led the majors in home runs once in each league with Toronto and San Diego. He had 30-plus home runs in 10 seasons, 100-plus RBIs in 8 seasons. He won a World Series title with Atlanta in 95. His plaque will not feature a team logo. He said it was too hard to pick a primary team. And, he made significant contributions to most of the teams he was on. I completely agree with his decision to go no plaque. He was a 5-time All-Star. He won an All-Star MVP, a 3-time Silver Slugger. He ended his speech by saying, quote, "I'm humbled to be standing on a stage with some of the greatest players to ever play this game. Honestly, I would have been happy just playing one day in the big leagues." I always loved Fred McGriff, no matter where he was. Humble guy, great teammate. And, think about it, guys. If it wasn't for the strike and wiping out a season and a half for him in 94 and the beginning of 95, he would have been a 500 home run guy, and he would have been a shoo-in for the Hall. No, you hit 500 home runs. If you don't do something stupid like Barry Bonds and Aroyd, you get in. So the fact, one, that he topped off at like 36% is insulting for as good of a player as he was. But I like that the contemporary committee was like, yeah, this is garbage, and all 16 of them voted him in. I mean, I love seeing, one more redemption story for Fred McGriff. Just one hell of a ball player.
Yeah, Crime Dog absolutely should have been in, and I'm glad that he finally got his due. And welcome to the Hall. I completely agree with everything there. He should have gone in with the no logo cap, and he was such a big teammate for everybody, but it was with those teams.
And even late in his career, he was still very, very productive. I mean, he just had an engine that never stopped. Funny story, when he was traded to Atlanta, the very first game was delayed because one of the press boxes at Fulton County Stadium caught on fire. And Ted Turner was down on the field with them and said to Fred, "That fire came because you're here, and you're going to be the fire that lights this team." Prophetic words from Mr. Turner. Always funny how that works out. And then we'll roll into Scott Rowland. Much of his speech was geared towards celebrating the work ethic and simple values of his small-town background, manifested in support and guidance from his parents, including his father, urging him to focus on what he can do, not what he can't, with the words, "Do that then." He said, quote, "Do that then" carried me into the minor leagues and gave me a simple mindset that would never allow myself to be unprepared or outworked. "Do that then" put me on the stage today. At no point in my lifetime did it ever occur to me that I'd be standing on this stage, but I'm glad it occurred to you because this is unbelievably special. So he was voted in on his 6th ballot, but he started at an historically low level of 10.2, which is now the lowest initial percentage for a player who was eventually inducted into the Hall of Fame. He is the 12th Hall of Famer to feature a Cardinals logo on his Hall plaque. That was not a surprise to me that he picked the Cardinals. He was traded from the Phillies to the Cardinals in 2002 at the trade deadline. He went on to play 4 All-Star games, 3 Golden Gloves while he was with the Cardinals, and he won a World Series with them in 2006. Career slash line of 281, 364, 490, 2,077 hits, 316 home runs, 1,211 runs scored, 1,287 RBI, and he did have 70.1 WAR, per Baseball References WAR. He was the unanimous Rookie of the Year with Philadelphia in 97 and was a 7-time All-Star with 8 Golden Gloves. And, this is crazy. I never really thought about this. He's only the 18th third baseman to enter the Hall of Fame. It's still the least represented position in the Hall of Fame outside of DH. The only one right ahead is catchers, and they're only at 19, which catchers, that's a whole different animal in and of itself. Jason, before you roll into it, Joe, you had to deal with Rowland and his bat and everything in St. Louis for a long time. Were you surprised to see him get put in by now, especially with as low as he started?
No, I mean, I thought he would eventually get in. I think the first couple of years he was on, there was a lot of things still to be settled. I think we still had a lot of the steroid era guys on the ballot taking up some votes. So, I mean, I'm not surprised it took this long. And he started so low because there was a lot of that going on when he first was on the ballot. Yeah, I dealt with him, with the Cardinals and when he played for the Reds too. So it was, not pleasant, obviously.
That's fair. And that MV3 combo of him, Pujols, and was it Edmund? Jim Edmund was the third of the MV3.
Yeah, Jim Edmonds in center field. Yeah.
Yeah. That was a 3 damn good bats in the lineup.
Yeah.
So, Jason, you have a little bit more of a complicated legacy looking at Scott Rowland being a Phillies fan. So, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, first off, good for him. Definitely one of the best third basemen of our generation, especially and primarily with his glove. His offense was solid, but I think his defense is what really kind of carried him over the threshold. And I would actually argue that his 10% first ballot was too low. He should have started out higher. But again, you kind of look at who may have been on the ballots at the same time, other people getting the votes. It was just a matter of keeping him relevant until he could get in. But the thing that kind of drives me nuts is, as a Phillies fan, he did not leave on good terms. He didn't want to be in Philadelphia. And I have no problem with him going in with a Cardinals logo. I would have preferred that over to a split logo or no logo, because his greatest successes came with the Cardinals. That said, I'm still not a fan of the guy, although I do have to, and mainly it's because of his reactions to the team, the fans, the city. Yeah, there's no love lost there, really. But I do have to give him credit for his Hall of Fame speech. It was a very well done speech. I checked it out just to see if he would mention Philadelphia with that Rocky history. And there are two things that I really appreciate. The first one was he did call out Philly. He went through each of the teams he played for and kind of gave them some love. Excuse me. And he basically thanked Philadelphia for drafting him, for giving him the chance, and for developing him into the player that he was during his time there. And he was a unanimous Rookie of the Year in '97. And he actually never even played a position other than third base his entire career, which is fascinating to me. But then one of the other quotes that I thought was just hilarious. He started by saying it was a privilege playing for 4 teams throughout his career. Derek and Chipper, I'll explain that to you later. So I just thought that was really, really good acknowledgement to 2 players that he went against in his career. So, yeah, very well done speech. No love lost with the guy, but good for him.
So, Jason, I pulled it up. His debut year on the ballot was 2018. There were 4 players elected that year. 2018 was Chipper Jones, Vlad Sr., Jim Thome, and Trevor Hoffman. It was a very, very packed ballot. I mean, the fact that he didn't drop out the first year, that with that packed ballot, with addition to those 4 guys and all of the steroid guys that were still fighting and stealing some, plus the guys that were getting close to the end that the writers were trying to shovel ballots towards, it's almost remarkable that either he didn't start lower or that he didn't drop off just because of how tight that ballot was.
Yeah.
I'm glad he didn't drop off, obviously, as he was one hell of a defensive third baseman, no doubt about that.
Absolutely.
And there were 3 other guys on that ballot that would go on to get elected later: Edgar Martinez, Mike Mussina, Larry Walker.
Yeah. So there's 7. There's 7 right there.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's a lot of people sucking votes away. So that's understandable. Yeah, it goes back to the debate we have every winter when the Hall of Fame election results come in of, do we need to change the voting rules around so you can either vote for more than 10 or something, because it shouldn't have happened that he has to wait this long, or that some of these guys that get in on their 10th ballot and just squeak in, it's like, I look at these numbers and I'm thinking you should have been in quite a few years ago. And it's crazy that you want, like, Billy Wagner is going to be my next case for that. Wagner should have been in 2 or 3 ballots ago. The fact that he's not in yet is insane to me.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Go
I
ahead,
think
Jim.
you have to attribute that again to who was still on the ballot. I mean, I don't think, like I said, I don't think it was till 2 years ago that all the, A-Rods and Barry and Clemens came off. So
Yeah. Yep, that's exactly it too. Well, and then you remember, I think Chipper and Vlad were both over 95%. I think Tommy was over 90%. So that's a lot of votes right there too. All right. So speaking of the Hall of Fame, we also have some awards that were given out. The Buck O'Neil Lifetime Achievement Award went to Carl Erskine, who's now 96, former pitcher and last surviving key member of the famed Boys of Summer Brooklyn Dodgers teams from the 1950s. The BBWA Career Excellence Award was given out to John Lowe this year. He works for the Detroit Free Press covering the Tigers, and the Ford C. Frick Award winner went to longtime Cubs broadcaster Pat Hughes. Joe, take it away on Pat Hughes, man.
Yeah, Pat Hughes has been with the Cubs since 1996, with Ron Santo in the booth to start with, and then worked with Harry Carey some, and then he's been with Ron Coomer for quite a while now too, and he really enjoys his Hall of Fame speech. He did a ton of thank yous to obviously family and to the Cubs organization, the Ricketts, and to Ron Coomer, his partner in the booth. And he's like, I hope I don't call another game without him. I mean, he just really enjoys them. He's really fun. Gets people laughing in the booth. They're great storytellers, both of them. But Pat Hughes is just phenomenal. Got his start actually. He was in college playing basketball. He was riding the bench, and he started doing like play-by-play during the game while he was riding the bench, just kind of to pass the time. And guys were like, "You're pretty good at that. You should consider that." And got his start in the majors with Bob Uecker in Milwaukee. So there was a thank you to Bud Selig for that as well, since Bud Selig was the owner at the time. But again, he's been with the Cubs now since 95 or 96, and is just absolutely, when it comes to home runs, it's a get the tape measure out is his famous line, and when he does uniform descriptions, it's very particular and precise and very interesting, and just the way that he does it, the way he tells the story of the game is just really fun to listen to for me, and that part of the reason I love listening to him as opposed to listening to Girardi and Deshays talk about stuff. I can listen to Pat Hughes all night long. Guy is just awesome, and he said at the end of his speech that he hopes he gets to again say, the Chicago Cubs win the World Series. He talked about how emotional that call was for him and how much he was, unsure it was ever going to happen. He was kind of freaking out, and then it happens, and then he just hopes he gets to do that again, and right there with you.
I feel like a lot of people didn't think that was going to happen.
Yeah, I fell asleep for the rain delay and woke up just in time. So,
hey, at least you were up when it mattered, man.
Oh yeah. He's just like I said, he's a phenomenal broadcaster, well deserved. He's been doing this for so long now. He's been in the league in some capacity, broadcasting for more than 40 years. He's up there with the Vin Scullys of the world. I think he's excellent. And if you don't listen to him, I think you guys should give him a listen, a couple games, see what you think of him.
I've heard him before. He is a great listen. Yeah, Joe, the description you nailed the best is how precise he is with those uniforms. He will literally give you every single detail of the uniform from the top of the hat all the way down to the socks and the cleats. It's something special to listen to. He's truly a gem among broadcasters.
And they're trousers, not pants.
Exactly, trousers. All right. Now, Speaking of stories from former Hall of Famers, you have George Brett. Today is the 40th anniversary of the infamous Pine Tar game, July 24th, 1983, 2 outs in the ninth inning. He and his visiting Kansas City Royals were trailing the New York Yankees. Brett hits a 2-run home run off fellow future Hall of Famer Rich the Goose Gossage, vaulting the Royals into a 5-4 lead. As history has shown, New York Yankees manager Billy Martin, before being fired for God knows what time by George Steinbrenner, immediately challenged the homer on the grounds the pine tar on his bat covered more than the allowable 18 inches. So Tim McClellan was the crew chief, rookie Tim McClellan, which is crazy to think about too, because he umped for a long time. Laid the bat across home plate, which is 17 inches wide, and the pine tar was significantly more than an inch past the edge of home plate. So the home run was disallowed off that. Security had to confiscate the bat. Before that, Brett comes running out of the dugouts, arms flailing, screaming, getting up into McClellan's face. One of the classic player-umpire arguments you will ever see in baseball. Gaylord Perry, who has been known to have the ability to hide some things, shall we say, actually tried to get the bat and sneak it away. Security actually had to confiscate the bat from Gaylord Perry. Because now George Brett said he thought that Perry grabbed it because Perry liked to get baseball collectibles, but personally, I'm kind of the opinion that he knew something was up because he just had that sixth sense of something's not right here. I better hide this. And the Royals, after the game, did protest the results of it. So the bat was delivered to AL President Lee MacPhail. 4 days after he had circled the bases, MacPhail upheld the protest, overturned the on-field decision, reinstated the homer, negating the 4-3 win, and ordered the game replayed from the moment of the controversy. MacPhail said that although the umpire's interpretation of Rule 1.10b was technically defensible, it was, quote, not in accord with the intent or spirit of the rules. And then after this season, the rulebook provision was meant to avoid dirtying too many the provision was meant to avoid dirtying too many baseballs, not to affect the outcome of a player of the game. After the season, MLB actually changed it. So if you were going to challenge a bat, you have to do it before the at-bat starts, not do it retroactively. Because let's face it, the Yankees knew it the whole game that bat was not allowable, and they just waited until it was the right at-bat.
When they replayed that, when they picked it up from after that incident, did the Royals end up winning that game then?
Give me a second. August 18th. It took 12 minutes to replay the end of the game. The Royals did end up winning that game 5-4. And that was without George Brett because MacPhail retroactively ejected him for the outburst. Because of course he did. So, George Brett was interviewed years later, and they asked him, have you ever seen videos of it? And he said, yeah, I've seen videos of it. And then I showed it to my kids and said, you don't ever want to make me this mad. and he said they never did. So that was one of the iconic moments in baseball history, especially in the 80s. When you think of that era, that's probably one of the quickest things that's going to come to mind for most people. Especially for people that aren't fans of necessarily of the Royals. That was such a big moment, a big happening that it very quickly went down in history. That bat is up in Cooperstown today. Probably, I hope it's somewhere near both George and Goose's plaques, because that would just be perfect. So that was, it was the Great Pine Tar incident of 1983. Crazy that it's been 40 years already. All right, guys, moving on. I'll talk quick about my Braves. It was a mixed week. They dropped 2-3 to Arizona, but took 2-3 in Milwaukee because screw the Brewers. Arizona, they dropped game 1 16-13 in a football-style shootout that was just insane amounts of offense back and forth continuously and no pitching. Game 2, the Diamondbacks took 5-3. The Braves held on to the series game 3 7-5, so they did not get swept. In Milwaukee, they won game 1 6-4, dropped game 2 4-3, and then won game 3 4-2. My one player I wanted to note from last week, because it's not going to be a pitcher after a 16-13 loss. Austin Riley just went on a tear because it's August, almost August, and that's when Austin Riley tends to really heat up. Starting with that first D-backs team, he had 2 home runs and 7 RBIs in that one game. 7 RBIs is a career high for him now, and he would go on to homer in 5 straight games, which tied a Braves franchise record. I actually don't know who he tied that with. I meant to look it up and I forgot, but I do know that is the record is 5 with him and somebody else. All right, so that was it for the Braves this past week. Let's roll it on into the trade rumors and whatnot. I do want to preface this section by noting that in his last home game before the trade deadline, Shohei did hit a home run in front of the home fans, his 36th of the year. Will it be the last one in front of home fans? We will have to see. We'll get down to Shohei at the end. We'll roll into some others. I do want to note the Braves did fire off 2 trades today. They traded 2 prospects, Victor Vodnik and Tanner Gordon, to the Rockies for their closer, Pierce Johnson. Johnson this season, 13 saves, a 6 ERA across 43 appearances. Bover's last 12 ERAs down to 3.27. 58 strikeouts in 39 innings pitched this year. He's got a big arm, so that's it's kind of arm that they like to have out there for late innings. I have not heard what the plan is for him. My assumption is he's going to be a setup man, 7th inning kind of guy. He's not going to take the closing spot away from Iglesias, I would not think. They also traded cash to the Rangers for left-handed reliever Taylor Hearn. Hearn still has minor league options, is under team control until 25. Had very limited appearances in majors this year. He's got 10.29 ERA in those 4 appearances, but at AAA for AAA Round Rock, he's got a 3.66 ERA over 39 in the third. The big thing for Hearn, he's probably going to be stashed in the minors for now. If Dylan Lee is not able to come back in the time frame they are expecting, he'll come up to take Lee's spot, so they have another left-handed arm out of the bullpen. So relatively low risk move just for some cash. The prospects Atlanta gave up, Vodnik, he's our number 10, but honestly, I think he's kind of an overrated prospect. He's got good stuff, but he's essentially a fastball changeup guy. He has a slurve that he throws like 5% or less. Big fastball, but his control is not there. I from what I've seen from his minor league tape, I'm not super impressed by what he's got. And it's really Tanner Gordon. He's either a rookie level or a single A level guy. He's very, very raw, very rough. He's got a big arm, but again, it's too soon to say if he's really going to be much of an impact at all down the road. So I think honestly, it was a pretty good trade overall, both of them for the Braves, especially when you can give up cash for a left-handed reliever. That's always good. That's always a plus. All right, so some of the popular names being tossed around right now. Joe, I'll let you start this one off. Cody Bellinger is being tossed around. Possible landing spots, the Yankees, the Blue Jays, the Astros. But then again, are the Cubs going to sell? Are they going to buy? Are they going to stand pat? Personally, man, I hope they don't trade him. I love seeing him on the Cubs. He's having a hell of a season.
Yeah, I mean, he's having a heck of a bounce-back year. I think the Dodgers gave up on him. Maybe his change of scenery was just what he needed. He's got a lot of positive things going on in his life outside of baseball. Got engaged recently, had another daughter, so he's got a lot of positive stuff going on all around, which is neat to see. And sort of this bounce back here, more of the MVP player that you expect to have when he was with LA. But I mean, obviously those injuries had an impact on him. But this year he's back to normal. I think we'll get more into the Cubs later, but I think you'll know one way or the other by the weekend what they're doing.
Which way they're going to go. Okay. I could see him going to the Yankees or the Blue Jays. I don't know about the Astros. The Astros seem to poke their name into every damn trade rumor because they're the Astros, but I would think Yankees, Blue Jays.
I mean, the only caveat to the interesting wrinkle for Cody Bellinger is that when he was injured and came back, he played at first base for a while until he was ready to play center field again. So there is that versatility there. It's a la Trey Mancini, where you can play first and in center. So
That's
I mean,
good to have.
he's a valuable piece defensively for sure, and offensively he's just been lights out the last few weeks.
And also, I'm wondering too, why I'm thinking maybe the Yankees are probably the front runners. Left field has been an absolute hole in their defense for quite some time. I mean, the Joey Gallo experiment failed miserably. No, they're not going to take Kyle Schwarber off your hands, Jason. Nice
No,
try.
I was raised my hand as so there's also a gap in Philadelphia there too.
That's true. That is true. No, I didn't even think about the Phillies there, but
I could honestly see them trying for something that they won't have to give up a whole lot for. I guess the thing is, Joe, do you know what the contract is for him? Is he a free agent after this season?
It's a opt out, and it's not. I mean, he's a Boris guy, so he's probably going to opt out.
Yeah. So you're looking at whoever takes him is looking at a rental. So
Essentially,
I was essentially thinking that Philadelphia has potential to try and get him to shore up their outfield, kind of get somebody a little lesser than say Juan Soto or somebody like that. But I don't know that I see them doing that for a rental, especially another Scott Boras.
yeah, it's a 2-year deal with a 1-year opt out.
yeah, it's a mutual option for the second year.
Right.
So,
Gotcha.
and it's only a $5 million buyout. So even if he if he declines, he's not out very much money.
Right.
So that's that's not a big enough buyout to stop him. But I'm sure they left it like that on purpose, because if he got injured a lot again, that way both the team and the player had an easy out for it.
Yeah, I mean, he's like I said, he's been excellent offensively, defensively. He's been shoring up that spot.
Mhm.
I think he's, other than that time he was out hurt, I mean, he's been everything that they could have asked for.
Yeah, definitely. Next on my list, I have Blake Snell of the Padres, probably the best pitch. If so again, the Padres were not sure. I think they should really be selling, but we all know the Padres and whatnot. They very well could try and bring more players in. Blake Snell, if he is made available, will be the best pitcher available at the trade deadline, without a doubt, I think. Especially being a power lefty that can rack up strikeouts, he's going to be in high demand. I mean, I would say essentially every contending team is going to at least have conversations with San Diego. As far as who's going to be the favorite, you'd like to think LA would be the favorite, but I doubt the Padres will send him to LA. They don't want to send him in the division. You never want to do that. So I wouldn't be surprised if any of the East teams would be, especially the Yankees, would be calling, or I could see him going almost anywhere, though. I don't really think anybody is a front runner for him at this point. And again, until the Padres make their intentions known, it's all a toss-up anyway.
Yeah, and it's going to depend on the cost as well, because if they are going to be sellers, you're looking at them also probably getting rid of Juan Soto and some of the other players there, because they have severely underperformed this year as a team.
Yeah. Soto, the only reason I'm not sure is, doesn't he have 2 more option years left?
He'll be a free agent after next year.
Oh, after next year. Okay. Yeah. Now's the time to dump him then.
Right.
Let's be real. Juan Soto was not great when Washington foisted him upon the Padres last year. And he has not had that bounce back that the Padres were expecting. So
he's in the wrong ballpark.
I think if you get him into a more hitter-friendly ballpark, I don't know that he's going to get that much better. Something has not been right with Juan Soto for the last 2 years, and I don't know what it is. He's still getting walks, but that's it. So I don't know, man. All I do know is I do not have a spot in the outfield for him in Atlanta, and especially not for what the Padres would demand for him. The other big name that I think we're going to see coming out of San Diego if they start selling is Josh Hader. And Josh Hader will absolutely command them a nice premium because a guy with postseason experience, a flame-throwing pitch, and the fact that lefties, other than Freddie Freeman and a couple others, have a lot of trouble hitting him, he's going to be in very high demand for anybody who needs a bullpen arm. I'm just going to preface this for everybody on the rest of the way out, other than maybe Montgomery. I don't expect Atlanta to be involved in any of this because they don't need to be. So for Hader, do you guys have any sense, or have you read anything about who the strongest contenders for Hader are? Or is he just another one that most of the contenders are going to be nibbling around at him to see what the cost's going to be?
I probably, most teams are going to nibble at it or see what it's going to take. And I mean, honestly, it sort of just depends on a lot of, injuries and stuff like that. I think with Philly, not necessarily that they would consider it, but I think if you're Philly, what's the status of, I think, is it Sir Anthony that's hurt right now?
And Alvarado.
So, I mean, that's a situation where if you're pretty clear on what the future is for those two, then maybe you do have to get into the mix.
Right.
Yeah, it's a very good thought, Joe.
I think it just, for them, it depends on where do they need the biggest spots filled. And I think Kimbrel has done such a good job that they don't necessarily need to go after Hader. I think that they'll probably nibble just to see what the cost is going to be. But if they have a choice between getting another pen arm like Hader or bringing in a different first baseman or an outfielder, that's what they're going to do.
Yeah, that would make sense. All right, and then let's look at the St. Louis guys. Jack Flaherty and Jordan Montgomery are their two pitchers that will be up. Flaherty is an interesting case because he's still coming back from he came back from Tommy John halfway through the year last year. He really hasn't had a great bounce back yet this year. 7-6, 4.39 ERA and 19 starts with a 1.5 WHIP. I don't think Flaherty is really going to bring them a very big return, although with potentially not a lot of sellers out there that may help drive his price up. But I'm thinking teams that need like a 3-4 guy will probably nibble at him. Montgomery, if Snell's not made available, Montgomery is going to be another highly asked for arm. Again, left-handed starter. I would think probably the Dodgers would be interested in him. The Astros would probably be interested as well. Maybe even the Yankees, because, like the Astros, the Yankees like to poke their noses into everything.
Well, I mean, you do have to look at the fact that Rodon has been back has finally pitched maybe for 2 weeks now, and he hasn't looked that great.
Yeah.
So they're looking at their options, to be sure. I mean, outside of the cheater Germán, they don't really have anybody that great. I mean, Garrett Cole too, but other than those two, I mean, it's kind of been they've been good enough to win, but not jumping off the page by any means.
Yeah, no, you are absolutely right about that, Joe. Ron just commented with the hashtag Goldschmidt for Philly. I don't.
Yes.
Yes, of course you would want that. I don't think that he is going to be made available for trade. He's not going to be a free agent until 2025. So he's coming off an MVP year. Just think about how much the Cardinals are going to ask for him. And he's still having a good year this year. He wasn't an all-star, but it's still a solid year. I do not see the Cardinals letting go of Goldschmidt easily. I mean, 283, 371, 466, not a bad line, 16 home runs, 2-7 WAR so far. He's not Ronnie.
He's not the reason the Cardinals are in this position.
I don't think you're going to see him go, and I don't think you're going to see Arenado go, but I'll talk about Arenado in a minute. Ronnie said, good, send them to everyone from Kyle to Nola. Jesus, Ronnie.
I do think that if the Phillies make a move, I think out of all the ones that we've talked about so far, the most likely, not that it's going to happen, but I think the most likely is a trade for Juan Soto.
Yeah, I don't really see that one happening either, but it's more likely than Goldschmidt, that's for sure.
I could see the Phillies, like you said earlier, getting to the mix on Bellinger.
Yeah.
Since he does first and in the outfield. But I mean, now that you have a future Gold Glove first baseman in Bryce Harper, I mean, what the heck?
Hey, he's been
a hell of a catch,
and he made another good play yesterday. So he's actually like starting to give people vibes of he potentially could actually win a Gold Glove at some point at first base.
Definitely won't be this year. You don't get a Gold Glove for a half season at the position, but I've been impressed. I'm not easily impressed when you move an outfielder to first base just to stash him somewhere, but he's playing very well. I'll bring up Arenado now. They could make him available, but let's remember he's got a full no trade clause. So it seems very unlikely that he would waive that to move anywhere other than maybe the Dodgers. He is a SoCal guy, so I could see him waiving it to go out and play for the Dodgers, especially because they're in contention and the Cardinals are going nowhere. But I think Arenado is very, very unlikely. There is another third baseman that will be available, though. Washington's Yamar Candelario should be made available. I'm hearing the Yankees are probably going to be interested in him with Josh Donaldson hurt yet again. Let's be real. Donaldson's had 15 hits this year, and 10 of them have been homers. So it's either big hit or nothing, and that's just not going to fly ever.
If for some reason the Cubs get into the mix on trades, this is another spot that they're going to go after, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be. They got to solidify that position.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Has been air prone, and he's a homer or nothing guy too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you could tolerate that to a point, but not for what you guys have been getting.
No.
The White Sox, Lucas Giolito will likely be made available. I think it's been pretty much guaranteed that he will be made available by the team. I've been seeing the Reds are very interested in Giolito. I'm sure other teams as well. But can I just say, I love seeing the Cincinnati Reds are interested in buying players. This is good to see them perking back up again and, not selling guys when they're this close to playoffs like they did right after 2020, because screw the ownership of that team. So, so the Reds will likely be bringing players in. Definitely, they do need another arm, so that would be a good match for them. Joe, I was reading Lance Lynn probably won't be made available because he has too much control left for the team. Tim Anderson is finally playing well enough that they could try and get offers for him. Maybe that will help Anderson. Just get him into a different team.
Anderson's got a bunch of off the field drama that's been messing with him all year.
Yeah, change of scenery.
He's got off the field drama in his personal life. It's got nothing to do with the city of Chicago. So it's kind of, up in the air as to whether a change of scenery is actually going to help him or not.
And then Ronnie commented,
up until the last week, he really hasn't been playing like he's worth anything.
Yeah, it's so true. So true. And then Ronnie said, I saw the Reds might be selling India. I would be surprised by that. I don't think they're quite ready to dump on India, but if the right player would be made available in a trade, they would absolutely make India available to be one of the guys going back. But I think it would have to be the right guy for that, because I don't think they're ready to give up on India yet.
It sounds to me as if they were doing that for controllable pitching. So, if you're doing that, you're doing that for a guy like Lance Lynn, who, if they were to make him available for the right price, then that's a easy switch, I think.
Yeah.
You're talking about a former rookie of the year, so I don't see them just getting rid of him for nothing. I think he's going to warrant some kind of a decent return. So I don't see them giving up on him yet.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Especially for a second baseman with a decent glove. He's not a Gold Glove level, but he's got a decent enough glove that he's definitely above your average second baseman.
Yeah. They've got a ton of infielders coming up through Ellie De La Cruz and some other guys. So
Yeah.
that's the basis for some of this, I think, from what I read.
Mhm.
And the reasoning I saw again was the controllable pitching side of it.
That would make sense. And then, of course, we've got the Golden Goose, the man of many, many talents, Shohei Ohtani. I don't know, man. Okay, let's just open. Do you think the Angels are going to trade him? I don't
No.
think they will.
I mean, I don't think this makes a ton of sense, and I don't think if you're thinking about trading for Ohtani, the only way you're doing this is if you give away everybody or half your farm system, and you have a guarantee that he's going to extend.
Yeah.
Otherwise, this is pointless. There's no reason to bet the farm on a rental.
Correct.
Yeah. And here's the thing. When I was talking about this before we went on tonight, Ohtani should have been trading last year. That was the time. That was when his value was at the absolute highest, because you would have had a half season last year and then a full season with him this year to roll with him and see what you could do and maybe try and convince him to stay with your team. I'm just curious, what would the Angels be able to pull in? Because Joe, you guys both bring up the great point. With a rental, no matter how talented he is, if there's no guarantee of a re-sign, you're not emptying your farm system for one guy. And let's face it, the Angels have nobody else that I would want to have added onto their side of the trade to try and justify giving up half my farm system for.
Yeah, I mean, Anthony Rendon has that's been the most team unfriendly deal of all time, probably for them.
That's an awful deal.
Yeah, that was absolutely terrible. You know, you have to think that they had Rendon, Trout, and Ohtani and can't do anything. Is
12 years since they've been in the playoffs?
It's awful, man.
That's, yeah. So, I mean, who would want Ohtani? Who wouldn't want Ohtani?
It's not a question of who would want him. It's a question of who wants to mortgage their future on a 2-month rental.
Yeah. And not only who wants to mortgage their future, but who's going to have enough to mortgage that the Angels will find acceptable. I mean, I almost feel like if Ohtani is moved, and again, I don't think I'm with you guys. I don't think he is. No. If Ohtani is moved, it's going to have to be a 3-team trade, because that's the only way you're going to send enough assets to the Angels to make them happy enough to make that deal.
But I mean, if you think about that, who the heck's going to want to jump in on that nonsense?
Nope, not me.
No, thank you.
Nope.
No, I'd rather wait for the free agency for Ohtani.
Yeah. Even though I know Atlanta has zero shot.
Oh yeah,
but the $600 million man, it's absolutely ridiculous.
It's going to be nuts. Although it's going to be better than the 38.5 they're paying Anthony Rendon this year for basically nothing, for 0.1 WAR worth of effort this year. So anyway, so guys, let's look at the bubble teams here. San Diego, the Mets, the Cubs, the Angels, the Mariners, and the Guardians. I think those are probably roughly the top 6 in MLB as a whole that are true bubble teams that may sell, may buy. So who do you think's of that list? Who do you think's going to buy? Joe, I'll let you lead this one off since your Cubbies are in there. Who do you think's going to buy? Who do you think's going to sell?
I don't know. To me, I think, like I said about the Cubs, we'll know that. I think going into the weekend, we'll know for sure which way that's going. Mm-hmm. They're within 5 now of that last wild card spot because the Giants lost today. So they're still technically in it. And I mean, you have 2 against the White Sox and 4 again against the Cardinals. So, I mean, could they be in this on Monday? Sure. Do I expect? Do I know what they're going to do? I absolutely have no idea. Yeah. I do think this is going to be a down to the wire thing. It'll be interesting to see if they decide to sell, who they decide to get rid of. I do expect them to probably trade one of their bullpen guys away for something. I don't know if they're going to get in on the action and make Stroh available and Belly available. That's a mess, honestly. Both guys have expressed an interest in staying. So if you're going to trade them and hope to resign them in the offseason, 99.9978% of the time, it never works.
Yeah.
Like, you never pick him back up in the offseason. Once they hit the open market, screw it. You're done.
Yeah. Home field loyalty's gone at that point.
No, nobody's got that. Yeah, they want to stay. But if they get traded, do you think they're going to want to come back? No. Even if they say they do. They're doing what they have to do, I think.
Yeah.
Stroh's been pretty vocal about that. But, I think if you let those guys go, they're not going to come back in the offseason. And to think that they are, given ownership's history on that, is just stupid to me.
Mm-hmm.
I do think the Guardians will probably pick up a piece or two, maybe another bat of some kind. That seems to be their hole right now, is offensively.
Mm-hmm.
Pitching wise, they've been pretty good. Other than, Bieber's hurt and he's now on a 60-day IL. But other than that, I don't see a single reason why the rest of these teams should be buying at this point. I mean, if you look at the NL West, that's a 2-team race. That's LA and Arizona, and the Giants if they do enough to stay relevant for the wild card. But you don't have a shot in this, and the fact that you spend all this money and have no shot is kind of stupid. So you got to be selling at some point. If you're these teams, I think the Mets, with the way Atlanta's been playing, with the way the rest of that NL is going, they should be selling. And that's kind of where I'm at with it.
What do you think, Jason?
I don't know that I see any of these teams really buying. I think I see them. I see some of them kind of just staying pat. If anybody buys, it might be the Angels to try and build a team for Ohtani to consider staying.
Mm-hmm.
I think you potentially have the Mariners buy, but I could also see a lot of them staying pat or selling. I think you're going to see the Padres sell. I think you'll see the Mets sell. The Cubs are absolutely the true definition of a bubble team because they're not out of it, but I don't know that they have the current talent that a whole lot of improvement will do anything. So,
yeah. So for me, I think San Diego is I think they're going to make a lot of noise, and I think they're going to end up selling. I don't think they should be buying, but I think they'll be aggressive and sell off as much as they can. The Mets will likely be selling, but the Mets don't really have a ton of tradable assets, so I don't really know what they're going to be selling. Verlander and Scherzer both have no trade clauses. I'm sure there are teams that would be interested in taking a flyer on them, although not at the insane contract, so the Mets would have to eat a bunch of that as well. And they'd have to convince the two guys to waive their no trade. So we'll see about that.
Where you're likely going to see them move is Canha or Pham. Those will be the two that'll move.
Yeah, and they're not going to get a lot back for either of them. The Cubs, yeah, I think Jason nailed that. Cubs are truly a bubble team. We're going to have to see what's going to happen. That division is weak. That is a terrible – it's not as bad as the AL Central, but it's a terrible division. And it might not take much of a run to be able to get into first place and hold on to first place. So we'll have to see what they decide to do. Hoyer's unpredictable as hell, so that's always a wild card too.
I think the other thing you have to look at with the Cubs is that division week? Sure. If you look at – I don't have the stats in front of me, but I think they're the only team in the NL Central with a positive run differential. It's ridiculous. When they're on fire offensively, they are on fire offensively.
Give me a second. I can tell you that because I had that pulled up just earlier today, but I forgot to make a note of that because I figured it might come up. Yes, they are the only team with a positive. Now, Milwaukee's only -6, Cincinnati's only -3, so they're close. But Yeah. It also brings back a certain prediction that one person on this show made that Cincinnati might actually make some noise this year, while everybody else is like, no, the Pirates are going to be better than Cincinnati. Hey, guys, Pirates are last and Cincinnati's in second. I don't often get preseason predictions right outside of the Braves, but I got that one.
I think we thought, based on their offseason moves, that there wasn't a ton to be excited about.
Well, we didn't actually think that they were going to have the balls to start bringing up these young guys now. We thought they were going to wait another year.
It's like the Orioles.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
we knew that the Orioles had the potential to be really good. We did not see them being as good as they are. So
I'll agree with that. That's for sure. The Angels, I think the Angels are going to end up selling everything but Ohtani just to bring guys in to, they're going to sell off the expiring contracts, bring guys in to try and convince them to come back. I agree with whoever said that. Mariners, actually, the Mariners might be buyers. I think they might try and make a little bit of a run, grab that last wild card spot, and, make a run to the playoffs. Guardians should buy because, again, the AL Central is weak. So we'll see about that. And, again, going back to who's going to be active, the Padres will be active like they always are. I think they will likely be the most active. Here's the thing. I don't know about the buyers that none of the buyers, the big buyers, have big enough holes to dump most of their farm systems for Ohtani. The Dodgers will probably make some moves. They've had more injuries. Atlanta's not doing hardly anything. I've said that time and time again. Jason, you've mentioned Phillies outfielder, first base, maybe a pitcher. Really, though, a lot of the other buyers, nobody's going to be shooting for the fences, I wouldn't think. But then again, the trade deadline is coming up, so we will I'm excited to see how it goes because it's always an exciting day to just wait for my phone to go buzz, 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 to the point that I could feel it over the very loud mower I am sitting on. So we will see about that. All right, Joe, what about the Cubbies this past week?
Yeah, interesting week for them. They take, 5 out of the 7 of the week, so that's a good week for them. They take 2 out of 3 against the Nationals, 7-5, the only loss, 17-3, the win, and 8-3 win. And then, of course, the Cardinals taking 3 out of 4 against the Cardinals is always a good thing. It's wonderful. So they take this series. They lose on Thursday 7-2, win 4-3, 8-6, and 7-2 the rest of the weekend. Justin Steele had a great start on Saturday, I believe it was, or actually on Friday. Gets a 4-3 win because they had 4 runs early on. Excellent for him. And the big story, we talked about him already, but Cody Bellinger had himself a whale of a week. 4 runs on 11 hits, 2 doubles, 2 homers, 9 RBIs. Slash line for the week, 458, 462, 792, OPS at 1254. So had himself a hell of a week. Leading up and beefing up a lot of this trade talk, trade value up, as I say, this week for sure.
All right. So moving on, let's take a quick fantasy update for the DDAB Fantasy League. And in the extended week, because of the All-Star break, Maya Cunez-Bumas took down Ronnie Schmidt-Happens 15-12. Joe once again shows up to be Jason's kryptonite because we got to continue the DC theme here. And Happy and Hornsby took out Turner and Chooch 15-13. So I had a big lead over Ron, but we were very close all week, and he was able to close the gap. So I was not able to pass Jason this week, but Jason's lead is down to 3.5 games. And actually, Jason, Ron only lost a half game in the standings. He only went from 64 to 64.5 back. So really, it was a moderately successful week all the way around for everybody but you.
Well, I mean, considering the other week I was down to like a half game, I'll gladly take it because I was able to pick up a total of 5, I think, last week and then just lose the 2 this week. So,
You didn't pick up any on me last week. We tied.
Or then 2 weeks ago it was that I picked up the 5.
Yeah. So,
but I mean, I get to face Ron this week, so here's hoping.
Hey, this might be the week Ron's team finally shows up, man. You never know.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing for Joe and I this week is we were close the entire week. And the reason that we were close is because Joe had the hitting and I had the pitching. And neither of us were really taking anything from from either person. Like we each had like maybe one or two in the different categories. But yeah, this week my pitching showed up while my offense just took a nosedive. But yeah.
I get that, but in reverse. My pitching was not good.
Considering I lose to Joe by like 4, 5, or 6 plus, I will gladly take just 2 this week, especially since it meant that I still ended up getting 13 categories somehow.
Somehow. All right, so let's move on to the Orioles Rays series. Now, this was a huge series this past weekend, guys. Arguably the biggest single series of the weekend with playoff implications on the line. The O's took 3 out of 4 from the Rays in the Tropicana. That's a stadium they do not play well in traditionally, and they moved into the AL East lead with a 2-game cushion, so hell of a week for them. Oh, Joe, I'm sorry. I did blow through you and didn't let you talk about your take your victory lap. Dude, go ahead. My humblest apologies.
It's all good, man. Hey, I'm just here to help. I'm just here to keep it close. What can I say? Jason's right, though. This was basically a majority of the categories were decided by the weekend. It was just a matter of whether 1 or 2 points would go one way or the other. I'm disappointed that the White Sox let Giolito not get a win yesterday.
I am not.
So the lead may have been 3 or 2.5, and I would be expecting some, compensation from our humble commissioner for keeping it close. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, offense showed up for me. Pitching did not.
Yeah, I got to figure out my pitching. I'm not happy with my pitching lately. It's been very, very, very bad and has kept me out of what should have been some very comfortable weeks over the last month and a half.
I am still happy that I keep winning the hold category. That's my that's one of my weekly goals is to win that hold category.
The category that Andrew's going to get rid of next year.
Yeah. No, I am. Not because I don't use it. It's because it's not awarded consistently. There's no set definition for how holds are awarded, and there are times when it's like by the definition in the book it should have been awarded, but for some reason the scorekeeper decided not to, and then it's not added back in later when they look at things like a Schwarber's initial error that wasn't, but then was made an error after the fact when they were like, oh yeah, that's an error. They don't really do that with holds, so we'll find a new pitching category to swap out holds. It's not because I don't do it. It's because the inconsistency of wording it. If it was in again next year, I'm not picking up a setup man to grab holds. I'm still going to grab an extra closer and run saves. It's just never really went after the holds. So, all right. So, like I said, Orioles Rays. Now that Joe's had the chance to put me back in my place where I belong. The nice thing the O's players were like, it felt like being in a playoff-like atmosphere down on the Tropicana. All 4 games decided by 3 runs or fewer, so it really was it was a hot, tight series. Ryan Hearn was a huge contributor for the Orioles. Go-ahead RBI single in the 9th on Saturday, and then gave them a 4-3 lead in the 6th on Sunday with a 331-foot solo shot off the foul pole, which was, by the way, the shortest home run for any Oriole this season. The fact that people keep that stat is impressive. It was also his 4th career home run against a lefty, whereas he has had 42 home runs against righties. He's up to a 313, 358, 528 line, 8 home runs, 32 RBIs in 55 games this season. Per Elias Sports Bureau, the O's have only taken 3 out of 4 in the Trop one other time in the history of Tropicana Field, and that was in April of 2006, so they were due. From 2020 to 2022, the O's lost 17 of 21 played in Tampa Bay, whereas this season they've won 4 out of 6 and have a 6-3 lead in the season series. So there's only 4 games left in the season series. They're all in Baltimore, September 14 through 17. Tampa's going to need to sweep that to clinch the season series, which they have won from 17 through 22. So the O's are due to take that away. Considering, division tiebreakers now determined by that head-to-head record, the O's have got to be feeling really good about their chances right now. They just have to take 1 out of 4 in Baltimore in September, and they've got the head-to-head clinched. So they ought to be feeling very good. Now, Tampa Bay, on the other hand, it's been a rough couple weeks. They started the season hot as fire, and they have really, really come crashing back down to earth. Before the All-Star break, they dropped 2 out of 3 to the Mariners, swept by Philadelphia, dropped 2 out of 3 to Atlanta. And in the middle of all that, they had a 7-game losing streak before they took the last one against Atlanta. After the break, they took 2 out of 3 from Kansas City on the road because Kansas City is garbage. Then they lost 5 straight, including a sweep to Texas before dropping 3 out of 4 to Baltimore. So, guys, let me lay out the pros and cons, but the question is, if you're Tampa Bay, there's 59 games left. How concerned are you? Pros, they're playing well at home. They got a 36-18 record. Second most runs scored in the AL at 540, tied for the fewest runs allowed in the AL at 396. They have a huge plus 144 run differential, and they still have a strong record versus both the AL East and the AL Central, 18-13, 16-4, respectively. Some cons, they're 25-24 on the road. They are 14-19 in one-run games, which I find a little shocking. They're only 9-10 against the AL West, which doesn't seem too, like it's that big of a deal, but this is what they've got left versus the AL West. 3 at the Astros this weekend, 3 at the Angels in August, 4 at home versus the Mariners in September, 3 at home versus the Angels in September. They've also been getting banged up a lot, especially in the pitching staff. Clevenger, Rasmussen, White, Kittredge, Mayha, Fleming, Walls, they're all currently on the IL. And remember, Shane McClanahan was down for, a month and a half with injuries as well. So I go back to the question. If you are the Rays, you have 59 games left. You just dropped 3 out of 4 at home to the Orioles, a team that does not play well in your stadium. How concerned are you, especially now that you are 2 games back in the AL East? Jason?
I'm very concerned if I'm the Rays. Remember, this team started off so incredibly hot, and it's not even that they've come back down to a norm or a median average. They are playing terribly right now. They are not showing up against teams that they'll potentially face in playoffs. They're not playing well against teams that they should even be beating. So if I'm the Rays, I'm very concerned because the Blue Jays are right behind them, and you have other teams. Now, I think the thing that is good for the Rays is that the rest of the divisions don't have many teams that would challenge for that final wildcard spot. They basically just need to finish third in their division or even potentially fourth, because it's certainly possible that all the wildcard teams come out of the AL East.
I think Houston's going to take one of them.
Yeah.
They're not going to catch the Rangers, but I think Houston will take one of the 3.
Yeah, so the Rays then will need to finish in the top 3 in their division, which is certainly possible, and I think it's something that's very doable, but I'm definitely concerned.
Yeah. All right. Joe, what's your concern level if you're the Rays?
I mean, you have to be concerned about the way they're playing now. I mean, who cares that you went 21-0 to start the year? It doesn't matter at this point. There's something to be said for what the Orioles have done in the last 2 years. I mean, before we started last season, my preseason prediction is they weren't going to have the worst record in the league. And a year and a half later, here they are. So, I mean, they're doing, Baltimore's doing all the right things, and Tampa Bay just seems to be floundering, and the injury bug has really been difficult for them. I mean, I think the record against the AL Central doesn't impress me because the AL Central is terrible. And the interdivisional record doesn't really almost matter anymore because you're going to be done with some of these rivalries before the last few weeks of the year anyway. So, I mean, if you're a Rays fan, you're certainly worried about it. Are the Rays going to make any moves to make that better? I don't know, but I think you have to be worried about where you're standing now, and your performance in one-run games is a huge thing. I mean, I know I harped on that a couple of years ago. The Cubs were just awful in one-run games, and there was no excuse for it. So, I mean, if you're talented enough, you've got to be able to manufacture runs. And right now, they just aren't.
Yeah. I'm at moderate to moderately strongly concerned if I'm the Rays. The only series that they've won lately is Kansas City, and Kansas City is a flaming hot garbage pile. They dropped 2 out of 3 against Atlanta. Atlanta's the best team in baseball going into the break. They got swept by the Phillies. The Phillies are getting hot and should be a playoff team. Well, if they would have run out of a real lineup tonight, they would be a playoff team right now because the Giants lost.
Yeah, they just lost 3-2 to the Orioles.
Yep.
Had runners on first and second before the final out happened. Tied it up in the bottom of the 8th, 2-2. Top of the 9th, 2 outs. Wild pitch gets a runner from first over to second. And then you have a fly ball down the left field line, which is slicing. It's going to stay fair. You have the 80-year-old legged Kyle Schwarber trying to run down and dive to catch a ball that goes off of the tip of his glove
got close enough to hit it with
the go ahead and winning run, which means put Brandon Marsh or some other semi-competent fielder in left field, and that game goes to the bottom of the 9th tied.
Yeah.
So I don't know what Thompson was thinking with that lineup tonight, but it was pure garbage.
Yeah. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that.
That's a rant for next week, though.
Yeah, I was about to say I can't wait for the rant next week about that lineup.
Nothing like coming out of the break, take it 2 out of 3 from the Padres or 3 out of 4 from the Padres, and then losing 5 of the next 6.
Yeah. Anyway, back to the Rays. They get swept by Texas, who is commandingly in control of the AL West. And then they drop out of first place because the Orioles take 3 out of 4. They are not performing well against the good teams they need to be beating, or at least showing up against. And Joe, I love the point you made with the one-run games. That is not going to get it done. And in the playoffs, you are more likely to have close games than you are to have blowouts, as we all very well know from watching many years of baseball. So, yeah, if I'm Tampa, I'm starting to get pretty damn concerned because the negatives are starting to look like they are going to be a bigger deal than the positives that they have. So we will have to see about that going forward. All right, so Jason, how about the Phillies for this past week, and you can save your rant for next week.
Well, I mean, it's one and the same.
I know.
Phillies went 2-4 this week, sandwiched 4 straight losses in between 2 wins. Faced the Brewers at home in Philadelphia. Took game 1 4-3. Lost game 2 5-3. Game 3 4-0. And then they went on the road to Cleveland against a team that they should have absolutely beaten, and instead lost game 1 6-5. Game 2 1-0. Before having to come back in game 3 and somehow won that in 10 innings, 8-5. So nothing really even notable. So we're just going to leave it at that.
Speaking of bad records in one-run ball games, hi, Philadelphia. Actually, they're not. Actually, no, I'm sorry. They're 20-12 in one-run games. Very bad.
They just had a very rough week, and they're in a stretch that's not getting any better. So talk about the team going cold at the wrong time. So, yeah. I mean, the good thing for them is while they could have gotten back into the wild card spot, they're still only like a game out from even the top wild card spot. So overall, I'm not necessarily concerned. It's one of those, I'm not mad, I'm disappointed. Where
it's almost worse.
Exactly, because this team just shouldn't have lost 4 in a row, especially against the. I mean, I could understand losing the series to the Brewers if they were in Milwaukee,
Mhm. But not in
but
Philly. Yeah.
no, not in Philly, and against the Guardians team, you should have taken at least 2 out of those 3, and yeah, they're just not. They were playing so well going into the break. They were one of the hottest teams in the league, if not the hottest team in the league. I know it's debatable, but they were definitely one of the hottest teams in the league. Came out of the break and took 3 out of 4 from the Padres, and then it's just like a switch went off, and they're cold. It's unreal, and that which is also even more mind blowing as to why they threw that lineup out there that they did tonight. But again, that's next week.
All right, moving on. Joe, who needs to read the room this week?
I mean, the biggest thing that I think sort of needs to be addressed is Major League Baseball in general. I mean, you have the Hall of Fame this weekend. Is there not like a Major League ready field up there in Cooperstown that they could have a Hall of Fame game or a Hall of Fame series? Every other sport has some sort of Hall of Fame game or some sort of feature game. You didn't do the Field of Dreams game this year. Why not do that over Hall of Fame weekend?
Yeah, Doubleday Field is up there. Why don't they use that?
Like, to me, it just seems like a no-brainer. I mean, they do it with the Little League World Series. Why not do it with Hall of Fame weekend? Have 2 teams play up there for the weekend and tie it into the Hall of Fame festivities. To me, that just seems like a miss to me.
Yeah, even if you'd use 2 minor league teams, because the dimensions of Doubleday are a little small, 296 down left, 336 left center, 390 to center, 350 right center, 312 to right. So it's not a huge stadium, but yeah, it would make a lot of sense though to have. Although they have had regular season games there, actually, not since 2007, but they have had regular season games there.
Well, and even if you're not going to use, Doubleday, why the hell is there not a Major League ready park up there?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, I've seen, pictures all over social media, family and friends who've got kids who are playing in tournaments up there, and it's like that just seems like a missed opportunity to grow the game and throw some fanfare behind the Hall of Fame. I mean, if Pat Hughes wasn't getting in, do you think I would have remembered it was Hall of Fame weekend? No. I mean, if you're not a fan of one of these guys or a baseball fan in general, you don't know that they had their Hall of Fame induction this weekend.
And the sad thing is they did hold a Hall of Fame game from 1943 through 2008. And then they started the Hall of Fame Classic in 2009, but that's right. But they moved that around. They didn't leave that on Hall of Fame weekend. So yeah, no, I'm with you. What's the point?
No, I mean it just doesn't make any sense. And I know the NFL does that in the preseason, but still, like there's a game set aside, Hall of Fame weekend for the NFL. We all know there's going to be a game, and it sort of ties the entire weekend together. Feels like that's a unforced error by Major League Baseball not having something like that.
Well, and here's the thing: if they are able to, if they're able to do the Little League game where it's just one game in Williamsport and then back to Philadelphia or wherever else the rest of the series is being played, you can do it for Cooperstown for one game. And especially if one of the 2 teams playing in that game has a guy being elected into the Hall of Fame, do you think for a second that team wants to be anywhere else? I don't.
I mean, don't they know who's in before the season even starts?
Yes, they do.
So why not do that?
That stuff comes out in December and January. So they know who's going to be in. They know who's going to be playing where that weekend. Yeah, they could absolutely be doing something with that. That's a good one, Joe. Anybody else?
That's it.
All right, Jason, who are your down on the farm players this week?
Yeah, so we're going to go down the farm. All right. So our hitter of the week this week, Joe, you'll appreciate this one, is actually going to be Moises Ballesteros from the South Bend Cubs. which are the high A affiliate of your Chicago Cubs. This week, he had a slash line of 444, 485, 741. Had 4 doubles, a home run, and 6 RBI. So really good showing for him this week. I particularly, what did it for me was that slash line. Hitting 444 in a week is pretty awesome. And then our buddy Dave will appreciate this one. The pitcher for Down on the Farm this week is Emerson Hancock of the Arkansas Travelers, the Double-A team for his Seattle Mariners. And this is a kid I'm telling you, you guys need to keep an eye on. He is going to be a stud when he comes up at some point. He went 2-0 this week, 13 innings pitched, 4 hits, 0 earned runs, 1 walk, and 14 strikeouts.
Damn.
Yeah. The kid has stuff.
That's filthy stuff. That's not just stuff.
Yeah.
All right. So that's Down on the Farm this week. We'll move on to the hot list. We're going to be doing something different now. Instead of me reciting off a long list, we're each going to pick a guy to feature. So for hitters this week, my featured hitter is Austin Riley of Atlanta. He hit 400, 1.240 and 25 at bats. He had 10 hits, a double, a triple, 6 homers, 9 runs scored, 16 RBIs, no walks, and 5 strikeouts. Jason, who is your hot hitter of the week?
My hot hitter of the week is going to be Alex Kirilloff of the Minnesota Twins, their first baseman. He went 345 this week with 3 home runs and 10 RBI.
Okay. And Joe, who is the Moneyball hitter of the week?
Freddie Freeman is the Moneyball hitter of the week this week of the LA Dodgers. 579, 680, 1158, slash line, and OPS of 1838. Only 3 strikeouts on the week, which is good for as productive of a week as he had. 11 runs, 11 hits, 2 doubles, 3 homers, 7 RBIs, and 5 walks. So really seeing the ball well, had himself a heck of a week, and is a big reason, other than the Arizona issues this week, which we'll get to in a second. Is a big reason why they took that spot over from the Diamondbacks.
Yeah. It will never feel right to hear Freddie Freeman of the Los Angeles Dodgers. That will never, ever feel right. That said, holy shit. That's a week. All right. And then for pitchers, my hot pitcher, I'm going to go with an Oakland Athletic, Luis Medina. 2 starts, 1-0 record, 10 2/3 innings, 12 strikeouts, 4 walks, a .84 ERA, a .84 WHIP. He gave up 5 hits, 4 walks, and only 1 home run allowed over his 2 starts this past week. Jason, who is your hot pitcher this week?
Sorry, Joe, but it's going to be Corbin Burns of the Milwaukee Brewers. He had a stellar week, and I should know because I saw him against the Phillies. He went 2-0 this week, 14 innings pitched, 4 hits, no earned runs, 3 walks, 23 strikeouts.
Jesus.
Including 8 innings and 2 hits against the Phils. So he was spectacular. He was the Corbin Burns that you've kind of come to expect, or that you had expected in the past.
Yeah, that's wow. Ouch. Okay.
It was a good week, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But, like Christian Yelich, he'll fade away.
All right, Joe, who's your adulting reliever of the week?
Well, one other pitcher I want to highlight first for the Cincinnati Reds, Alexis Diaz, 3 for 3 in saves, 2 hits, gave up 1 run on a homer, 4 strikeouts, .67 WHIP, 182 batting average against. Had himself a good week for Cincinnati as they're on the rise. And then the adulting reliever is Felix Bautista from the Orioles, 1-0 and 3 for 3 in save opportunities. So he was successful in every appearance this week. 5 innings, 3 hits, no runs, 1 hit batter, 9 strikeouts, a .60 WHIP, 176 of batting average against. So that run was the big disqualifier there for Diaz. Bautista had himself a heck of a week.
That's a great week. All right, and then moving on to the hot teams. My hot team for the week is the LA Dodgers. They're 7-3 in their last 10 games. They went 4-2 last week. They took 2 out of 3 from both the Orioles and the Rangers. So taking down a number 2 team that would become a number 1 team and another number 1 team in their division races. That's a damn good week for the Dodgers and Freddie Freeman. Joe, who is your hot team this week?
My hot team this week, I alluded to it a second ago, but the Cincinnati Reds swept Arizona and then a 2-2 split in the 4-game series with the Giants. Diaz, Abbott, De La Cruz, everybody is on fire right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good team right now. I'm glad Atlanta is done playing them for the year. Jason, who is your hot team of the week?
My team, actually, I even had one of them as my hot hitter there. The Minnesota Twins. They are 8-2 in their last 10. They swept the A's, split 2-2 with the Mariners, and then they swept the White Sox. So the Twins are absolutely hot right now. They've kind of started to pull away a little bit in that AL Central division. I believe they're 5 up on the Guardians at the moment.
Yes. All right. Looking at the week coming up, Atlanta has a short week this week. 2 at the Red Sox, Morton versus TBD, Strider versus Bello, and then 3 at home versus the Brewers. Atlanta has not yet announced a starter for the first 2 games, but it's going to be Hauser for the Brewers in Game 1, Tehran in Game 2, and then Sunday will be Elder versus Rhea. I do know Max Fried is going to be sent to Gwinnett, is supposed to be sent to Gwinnett on Wednesday, but I wouldn't be shocked if everything has looked good so far if they skip that and bring him up into one of the TBD slots. So we'll have to see about that. If not, he will be up next. He should be back next week. Cubbies this week, 2 at the White Sox, Hendricks versus Kopech, Stroman versus Lynn, Steele versus Mikolas. I'm sorry, 3 at the White Sox, my bad. And then 4 at the Cardinals, Steele versus Mikolas, TBD. I moved that from the wrong. I did have it right. It is 2 at the White Sox. Then for some reason, I typed that in the wrong line. So 4 at the Cardinals, Steele versus Mikolas, TBD versus Montgomery, TBD versus Wainwright, Hendricks versus Matz. It should be noted Montgomery may not make his start depending on what is going on with the trade deadline and moving him. So that might be TBD versus TBD. Then for the Phillies, 3 versus the Orioles, Sanchez versus Kremer, Walker versus Gibson, Suarez versus Bradish. 3 at the Pirates, Wheeler versus TBD, Nola versus Keller, Sanchez versus Priester, Walker versus Cabrera. And the Orioles for the second half of their week, 3 versus the Yankees, Rodriguez versus Schmidt, Wells versus Cole, Kremer versus Severino. So, Joe, let's hit with the Cubs first here. If they're going to show that they need to be buyers, this is the week to do it because the White Sox and the Cardinals, it doesn't really get given to you on a platter much better than that, even if they are all road games.
No, I mean this is exactly what you want if you're trying to, make a push. This is the week, obviously. Hendricks even could go, which is crazy. If they do sell, I mean, Hendricks may have had his last start at Wrigley last week, so which is mind-boggling to me, and kind of very emotional. Obviously, I'm a big fan of the Professor, as you guys know. So we'll see what happens here. This is put up or shut up time. Absolutely. And then if you have a good week, then you need to be buying on Monday. I don't care what it takes because clearly you've got something.
And then Jason, the Phillies, staying local this week, bringing the Orioles in, and then you head out to Pittsburgh for 3 poop games, as the scoreboard will show.
Yep.
So obviously they lost tonight. How are you feeling about the rest of the Orioles series?
I feel like tomorrow's game that we'll be at, we do have the tickets for tomorrow night's game. I have a feeling tomorrow's going to be kind of like that 16-13 game you experienced last week because you have Kyle Gibson going against his former team and Taijuan Walker pitching for the Phillies. Mm-hmm. So it's either going to be like 1-0 or 16-13.
Yeah.
And
It's late July in Philadelphia. It's going to be humid. I think it's more likely to be 16-13 than 1-0.
I mean, Walker has pitched very well lately. Gibson has not. Gibson started out really well and has become Kyle Gibson again, much to the chagrin of Orioles fans. And then it's Bradish and Suarez, we said, for Wednesday.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That can go either way. Neither of them have been dominant, but neither of them have been awful either. I think as long as the Phillies don't throw out the same lineup that they did tonight, have a chance to take 2 out of 3. I fully expect them to get swept just because that's how they do against the Orioles usually. But then the Pirates series, they have to take that series. Have to take that series. Anything less than a series win will be an absolute failure.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The Pirates are not,
especially because you have Nola and Wheeler going.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Wheeler's been a little rough lately, if I'm not mistaken, Jason. I think that's obviously something up and down, at least a little bit.
He's been a little bit up and down, but he's been pitching much better lately. He was the starter in the 1-0 loss against the Guardians. He pitched 7 or 8 innings, and the only run he allowed was because a pop-up fell between 2 fielders.
Okay.
That's frustrating.
Yeah. But yeah, I think he's getting back to where he should be. So, anything less than a series win will be an absolute failure of a weekend in Pittsburgh.
And then Atlanta, they're pushing hard for the Red Sox series, running both Morton and Strider out, not pushing one of them back. And then getting the Brewers in the turnaround at home. Again, they're not going to be facing the worst of the Brewers' rotation. Once again, I say, as I said to you last week, Jason, thank you for taking the Aces off the table. Once again, they get to avoid the Aces. Going against Hauser, Tehran, and Rhea. I'll take those odds, especially at the possibility of Max Fried coming back. I mean, even if they've got to run a couple bullpen games in there, Milwaukee's offense does not scare me enough that if we have to run some bullpen games, it's not going to be the end of the world against that team. Of course, I say that, and they'll probably get shelled and then still somehow come back and win the game, but whatever. And then the Orioles ending the week with the Yankees. It's a big week for the Orioles. As much as it's a put up or shut up for everybody else, it's very much a put up or shut up for them to say, no, this is our division, and we are going to, take it in our jaws, not give it back, and run with it like a bulldog. This is one of those weeks for the Orioles with Philadelphia, and then with a division rival with the Yankees. So it's a big week for them as well.
Yeah, Andrew, you mentioned the Montgomery possibly not starting in the Cub-Cardinals series. Mm-hmm. I think the other thing you have to watch in the Philly-Pirate series is whether Mitch Keller is there too.
Yeah, you make a good point there, Joe. I haven't heard that the Pirates are going to be shopping him, but I would not be shocked if they.
I saw that today that they may be open to trading with him.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't he still have a year of team control left?
Probably.
Okay.
I feel like you also have a potential for Brian Reynolds to be leaving that team too.
He signed an extension, didn't he? Didn't he sign that big extension?
He did, but it might not mean anything.
The other person I saw maybe available from Pittsburgh is Bednar, the closer.
I would expect Bednar to be made available.
Yeah.
I do not think Keller is going to be moving. He isn't arbitration eligible until next year, and he's not free agent until 26. Unless you are overwhelmed with an offer, you're not giving up a pitcher with that much control.
Yeah,
I just don't see him being made available. Shohei Ohtani, they would make him available for Shohei. But why the Pirates would be buying into Shohei when they have no shot of holding on to him in the offseason?
They would approach the Angels would approach Shohei and be like, "Hey, we're sending you to Pittsburgh," and he would be like,
"No."
You're serious?" Okay.
Number one way to make sure Shohei does not want to re-sign with the Angels, ship him off to Pittsburgh. I mean, that's like when you're so pissed off at a guy in your team that you just dump him on whatever terrible team you can think to take him.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, I know that they won't that because they aren't that pissed off at Shohei Ohtani. It's currently just the business of the game. But something else here in 3 weeks. So August 11th, I'll actually be out in Pittsburgh taking in Pirates Reds. So that should be pretty. I'm excited to see Ellie De La Cruz up close.
Yeah, I'm kind of jealous for you.
Yeah, because we're taking our niece out there so she can see a new ballpark. Because we took her to Philly for her first MLB game the other year, and this year we're going to take her out to Pittsburgh since it's my favorite place to see a game, and it's going to be it's going to be Pirates and Reds. So that should be really, really a good game.
Yeah, the only more recent screw you dump I can think of was when the Braves sent John Rocker to the Indians after he made insensitive comments about New Yorkers. So, yeah. All right, guys, you have anything else for this week?
Nope.
All right. So, guys, you can find audio recordings on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, anywhere else you can find our podcasts. You can see us live on YouTube, Facebook Live, and Twitter. Merchandise is at redbubble.com. You can follow us on our Facebook page at facebook.com/dollardogsandbeer. Twitter handle is at DDAB_podcast. All three of us are on Twitter. I'm at PyroLord314. Jason's at JRicker300. Joe's at JoltonJoe35. We are presented by Dark Arrow Podcast LLC and sponsored by Whiskey and Blade Barbershop and Lidditz. May your dogs always cost $1. May your beer always be cold. Have a good week. We'll see you next week.